Hello, gorgeous, and welcome to the Midlife Realignment. I'm your host, Esther Blum, and I'm here to disrupt the narrative on perimenopause and menopause with humor, nutrition, hormones, and fierce self-advocacy. Together, we'll rewrite your story and the rules because there's a light at the end of the vaginal tunnel. Let's go. Lisa Carpenter has worked with clients across the globe who have checked every box and still feel something is off. Lisa's methodology follows the congruency loop, her signature framework for moving through awareness, acceptance, action, and embodiment, closing the gap between what her clients know, how they live, and how their success actually feels from the inside so they can have more clarity in their decisions, deeper trust in their own direction, and a life that finally feels as good on the inside as everything they have already built on the outside. And I can tell you, having worked with Lisa, that her advice is magic. And I think you're going to have some incredible takeaways from today's show. So, everyone, I have had calls with Lisa and been on trainings with her and just really had the best time and took so many things away, which is why, Lisa, I'm so grateful to have you on the podcast today. And I really want to share your magic with my listeners and have you, sprinkle your magic on them the way you did with me. So, but I want people to understand, who is the typical woman who comes to see you and what are her struggles and what is she looking to change?
Well, first of all, thank you for having me on the podcast. It's always an honor when people invite me into their space and to share me with their people. So thank you so much. Oh gosh, where are people when they come to find me? They are highly in overfunctioning, overthinking, doing all the things. They are really in this space of pressure-driven achievement, like more. And they're really at this place of a lack of fulfillment. So everything that they've done, right? They've bought into the story of if you do X, Y, and Z, you're going to achieve this. You're going to find the pot of gold, and then you're going to feel amazing. You're already laughing at this because we've all been sold this
Guilty
story
as
about what success
charged.
is. Yeah,
Yes.
we've all been sold this story of what success is, and the men and women that I work with, they've typically achieved all the things. Like their life looks amazing on paper, but they're lacking fulfillment on the inside, and they're so trapped in these what I call the success paradox, these just identity driven achievement patterns that got them to where they are, but are now robbing them of the actual pot of gold at the end of the rainbow that they were hoping to find.
Which is ironic because it is literally the pot of gold at the end of the rainbow that they're chasing, that we've all chased from a very ego-driven place where we just think, I've got to make 7 figures. I've got to do this. I've got to do that, without realizing how many pieces of our soul that we can potentially lose along the way. There's nothing wrong with making 7, 8, 9 figures if that's what you choose. But if it's not truly aligned, if it's a number you're chasing on paper, but it's not truly aligned with your heart's desire, or you're not ready to step into it, or you have limiting beliefs, then what happens?
I think so many of us, again, we decide how life is supposed to be based on the stories that we picked up. And we never actually stop to check in, like, is this actually what I want? Am I doing this for me, or am I doing this to prove things to other people? Again, we never actually, and I know this was true for me, it was probably true for you as well. I never checked in to actually see if any of it was true. Is this truly who I am? I didn't realize that I was working underneath all these stories and beliefs that weren't really who I was. And, when you start to wake up to that and you realize, oh, there's a different way of living and breathing and creating amazing results in your life, that's when things start to get really fun. But I don't need to tell you the reckoning that comes prior to that as you start to strip away. The metaphor that I love to use is, if you've got Gen Xers like me, Joey Tribbiani from Friends, when he
Uh-huh.
comes in wearing all of Chandler's clothes, right? This is our lives. We go through life and we're putting on, other people's ideas and perspectives, whether they're parents or friends or teachers. And then we get to a certain age in our life, or we get to this place where we thought it was going to feel a certain way. And then we realize, I need to start taking off these layers. This isn't mine. This is not my coat. This is not my shirt. These are not my pants. Who am I underneath all of this? So, yeah, that's kind of the reckoning, because when you realize that you're not living, for lack of a better term, like your truth, what is really true at your core, it can be very, very unsettling and create a lot of dissonance.
Well, and I think it's unsettling again because we don't know who we are if we're not chasing something, if we're not grinding all the time, if our ego isn't screaming at us to produce more. And we're terrified that we're not going to earn enough to pay the bills. Also, we've gotten used to having, you know, perhaps a high cost of living or just having a big team. And we're not really sure how to reconcile all of that. If we get to the point where we've been hustling and grinding, and all of a sudden we kind of hit our 40s, our 50s, and, energetically, we're like, I don't have time for this. I don't want this. This isn't joyful. I'm having anxiety. I'm having depression. What do I do? Like, how I know that you see this again and again with the people you coach. How do you coach people through the dissolution of the ego, perhaps, and learning to surrender and trust? I mean, that's a huge leap of faith. People are like, well, I could step, but I don't trust or know the bridge is going to appear. How do you bring people across that bridge and redefine themselves?
That is really such a great question, and it's so nuanced. So, what I'll first say is that nobody really wakes up one day and says, God, I really want to peel back the layers of who I am. Said no one ever. It's usually there's a catalyst that happens in somebody's life. It might be burnout, it might be potential divorce, it could be a child that's struggling with something, it could be, deep financial struggles. There's usually a catalyst that forces somebody into a corner and they realize, I can't keep doing things the same way because that strategy is no longer producing the results it once produced. So there's a saying that, what got you here won't get you there. So it's recognizing that all these success patterns that we've run, right? The doing, the high functioning, the productivity, that works until it doesn't. And then it's okay, so how do we now start to strip back? So usually something has to happen that brings someone to their knees before they're even willing to do the identity work, because they don't realize that they have a problem. I didn't realize I had a problem. Did you? I thought I was a rock star. Look at all the things I could do at the same time. I was constantly in that proving energy and achieving energy. And that's what created my entire identity. I did not think there was anything wrong with it until I got brought to my knees because my partner went into rehab. And I had to look at, well, I didn't have to, I made the choice to look at what made me a match for this relationship. So, in learning about addiction, I had to learn about my own addictions. I had to learn about my own identity. And that's where things got really sticky because I started to see, oh, well, why do I believe everything needs to be perfect? Why is so much of my identity attached to proving? And why is it that every time I set a bar for myself to achieve something, it's still never good enough? Like it didn't matter if I walked out on stage and won. I would walk off and be so critical of myself. I could have done this better. I could have done that better. And I believe that those were the things that made me a great achiever. I didn't see being critical as a bad thing. So It really does, in terms of doing this identity work, it really does start with a catalyst and recognizing that what you're doing isn't working, and then having the courage to get in the ring with somebody who can really see your patterns and help you to start to pull them apart. And that's where the discomfort lies, because then again, it's how do I choose differently? So, how do I choose to walk off the stage and celebrate? That was awesome, Lisa. You did a great job. It doesn't mean that I can't still say, okay, here's areas to improve. I mean, that's always going to happen if you're a high performer. Um, but it is that ability to look at the things that weren't working, that were actually keeping me stuck in that old identity, and start to step into new ways of being, right? Like rest, right? When you face burnout, you have to learn how to rest. And it sounds easy, but it's not. It feels really uncomfortable. Like I remember when somebody told me you need to take a nap during the day. I'm like, who takes naps?
Yeah.
Stuff to do.
Yeah. So, when people come to you, what are some of the symptoms or signs or clues that you see when somebody needs a mindset makeover, a spiritual leveling up, a reckoning? Like, what do you see off the bat that you can just diagnose immediately from the 30,000-foot view? What do you notice? What patterns do you see in people who are high performers and who really do need to rest and hit the pause button, or just, take some time to really reorient themselves?
Mm. So I think it's important. The way that I speak about it is there's a real difference between high achievement and high performance. And I think that that's, we interchange them, and to me they're incredibly different. So a high achiever is really pressure driven. And they're identity driven. So everything they do reinforces a current identity, whether they're a prover or machine, and we can talk about that. But it's what they do. They have to do the things in order to feel secure in their identity. They get into over functioning, and they're very reactive. And success always shows up as a destination they're never going to get to. They're often exhausted, but they can't rest. They take vacation, but they kind of crash and burn into vacation. And they're not really on vacation. They're just working with a better view, is how I describe it. Like they work with a better view. The palm trees are in the background, but they're still in Slack with their team.
Yeah.
Um, they're overwhelmed. Like they feel like the latest client came to me, really said, I feel like my life is living me instead of me living my life.
Oh my
And she created
gosh.
tremendous success for herself, right? But she's like, I'm not enjoying any part of it. I just feel like I'm a hamster on a wheel. So that's a high achiever. Whereas a high performance individual does everything with intention. They are internally anchored. They know who they are. They're not working from these like wounded little girl or little boy places within themselves. They have deep levels of self trust and confidence that's not faked. They're grounded, and they see success as a feeling, not as a destination, right? So success is something that they embody. It's not something they're trying to get to. So when they take vacation, they're on vacation. They know how to rest, but they also know how to sit down and get stuff done. They choose the things that they want to achieve or accomplish in this life with intention. And I'm here for big, audacious goals, but not when they're driven by, I'm not good enough, I'm not worthy enough if I don't achieve this. When they're
Yeah.
driven by, like, this would be so cool, but my worth isn't on the line.
So zero attachment to the outcome.
Yes. Right?
Yes.
You can want the outcome, but your personal identity and self-worth has nothing to do with whether or not you succeed or fail. It's just part of the journey. And that's a whole different ballgame when you're playing that way.
And so, how do people learn to trust themselves and cultivate
Mm.
that self trust and that sacral power and knowing their value and their worth is not predicated on the number in their bank account. How do you coach people to understand the difference, be it
Mm.
how they're showing up in their day, how their nervous system is regulated?
So I put everybody through what I call the success paradox, and there's four different archetypes within that. There's the machine, the prover, the giver, and the polisher. And we start to unpack how each of these archetypes show up in their life. And then we start to look at how we can shift their behavior, how we can shift their identity so that they can step into new behaviors. So it's this process of undoing, right? We have to create awareness around the pattern, and then we have to move into acceptance that this was here. And what comes with acceptance, which nobody likes, is the grief of actually sitting with how you've been operating for so long when you didn't know, right? You didn't know what you didn't know. So, personal transformation sounds like it should be this fun, fun? I don't know if that's the right word, but
I would
nothing's
never
fun.
describe it that way. I
No,
would say
nothing's
beautiful and
fun about it.
necessary, but
Yeah, so there's a big grieving process that goes into
yeah,
this so that we can get to a place of acceptance of this is what's been happening. And
yeah,
nobody likes that period. It's really, really challenging when you start to go through your life and you can see how these patterns have been following you around, where you picked them up from, and how they haven't been serving you. And then it's about stepping into taking new actions that are often quite opposite from how you've been operating. So it sounds so simple if we talk about boundaries, for instance. Boundaries are, when you're looking at how you're saying yes and no to other people. Because if you're saying yes to something, you're often saying no to yourself. Well, for people who are a giver archetype, for instance, learning how to say no feels painful in their body. It requires them to sit with the discomfort of letting people down because they've learned their whole life their worthiness is dependent on other people liking them and other people, them taking care of other people, right? Their whole identity is other people are more important than you. If you take care of other people, you're going to get love and belonging from that. So it sounds easy. Oh, you just start saying no. It's not, because it's the client's willingness to hold the discomfort as they take different actions that are quite opposite from how they've ever shown up. So in my own life, and the way I explain it to clients, because I try, this work is hard, so I try and bring humor into it, right? We're not creating oxygen, we're trying to create better versions of ourselves. So if you go back to Seinfeld and George Costanza, right? When George figured out like every way he was living life was not creating the outcomes he wanted. So he decided, do you remember this episode? He decided to do the opposite of everything George would do, right? If the
yes.
gorgeous woman was ordering a sandwich, he'd just walk up to her and ask her out, whereas he'd never do that in the past. So it's kind of stepping into, are you willing to do what not you would do and do it over and over and over again and stay with the discomfort of being an opposite version of yourself until you create the identity that actually supports you feeling successful, feeling good in your skin. So if you're in the archetype of the machine, everything is about productivity, right? Like every second of every day, what am I doing? And so for a machine, learning how to slow down, learning how to create white space on your calendar and not fill it up, and not tell yourself you're being lazy or not productive, or the story that you're never going to get to where you want to be if you don't work harder and faster. So it sounds easy, like resting. But as we just discussed, resting feels wildly uncomfortable. White space on your calendar when you have stuff to do feels really, really hard. So that's what the machine looks at. The prover, it's starting to check in around like, am I doing this because I actually want to? Or am I doing this because I believe I need to in order to be accepted by other people? Is my worthiness dependent on how extraordinary I can be? So, how much of their life is centered around other people's opinions of themselves? And then the last archetype is the polisher. And they're like the perfectionist. Everything has to be a certain way. Because if everything can be a certain way, What they're really trying to do is control other people's perception of them. So if everything looks a certain way, you won't think or feel a certain way about me, right? So I'm trying to manage how you interpret me in the world. And so for a polisher, learning how to put work out into the world before maybe it feels ready, because I'm sure you've experienced this, right? Like just one more edit, just one more thing, just because we all want to produce excellence, right? Any high achiever wants to put good things out into the world, but there's a difference between perfectionism and excellence, and being able to ship things before they feel ready, and knowing like it's fine, it doesn't matter. I see people paralyzed all the time on social media with this. They don't want to shoot the video, they don't want to write the post because it doesn't fit. It's like, do you know how fast things move? Like, I don't even remember what I put out yesterday. Nobody's
Yes.
paying that close attention to you.
No,
Mm,
and it makes you all the more real if you're showing yourself coming from the gym with your hair in a unicorn ponytail and, no makeup. Like people are like, "Oh, she gets me. She's here to
yeah,
actually serve. She's not here worrying about if her makeup is just so."
yeah,
And I believe me, if you could see me looking like ass many days on my feed, and I'm just like, I
me
hate
as
the way I
well.
look, but you know what? I didn't have a lot of time. I got the job done, and no one is sitting there saying I look like shit except me. So they may be thinking it, but not probably not overthinking it really.
How long did it take you for you to break that pattern? Was there a period of time in your
Oh,
life where you did
girl.
have to look a certain way?
Oh yeah, I'm a
Yeah,
prover
me too.
and a polisher, so
Yeah.
recovering of both. And it's taken me probably, I mean, it's been a work in progress from, oh my God, my whole life. I mean, I'm 55 now. And, oh, when you were talking about the archetypes, I was like, oh, this is what it is. I'm a prover. I never had a name for it before. So it's hard to recover from something you can't name. You kind of know that's how you move through the world. But yeah, it takes time. But once you name it, I mean, one thing I have done a lot of work on is, healing from trauma, a lot of inner child work. So I really have learned to trust myself. But then the universe will test you and say, do you
Mhm.
really trust yourself? Because now I'm going to give you another little something, something. Let's see if you truly are still in that
Right.
place. So I think the work, it evolves, it's never done. But once you have some really solid tools in your belt and you're not afraid to be vulnerable and let go because you feel safe enough to do so, then I think that enables you to redesign your life. And I think a lot of people don't let go because they don't feel safe to trust. They've never done it before. I work with a lot of women in the weight loss space, and they don't feel safe to let their body fat go because they weren't safe when they were that thin person. So it's really getting in there and excavating what is
Excavating, that's right.
simmering underneath.
Right. So
And
coming back to that,
yeah,
self-trust, how do we get there? If you're in relationship with somebody else, how do we create trust with them? We create trust with them by watching that their words match their actions over and over and over again, right? Like that's congruency. Words and actions match. Energy is all aligned. And when it comes to building trust with ourselves, the same thing is true. Are your words matching your actions? Because if you're constantly abandoning yourself to these patterns, of course you're not going to fully trust yourself because you know there's something running under the scenes. Like when you're saying yes to somebody when you really want to say no, you can feel that. When you're fully exhausted yet you're still pushing through, you feel that. When you're in that proving energy and you're literally running a race against other people who don't even know they're in the race with you feel that. So when you start to extract yourself from these archetypes, and they don't ever go away, it's just you learn to work with them in a way that feels congruent, right? I still love my machine. She's very helpful when I need to get stuff done, but I have boundaries around her. She doesn't get to work till midnight anymore and then be up at 3 a.m. starting again. So, the more you can step into new ways of being in the world, the more you can embody the new identity of how you want to be showing up, That's what deepens your levels of self-trust. So it's about staying in integrity with yourself. And so many people are in integrity with everybody else, and they lack that depth of self-integrity. And that's the most important, that's one of the most important attributes you can work from. So trust in yourself is what's going to really, like, as you start to shift these patterns, you will develop more trust in yourself. And I completely understand the women and their bodies. And oh my goodness, that's a whole conversation we could go into for hours.
Well,
It's
I do
wild.
want to come back to that, but I am
Mm.
curious, what are the limiting beliefs that you have heard from your clients or you have witnessed just even between friends of, you know, what enables us, what are the limiting beliefs that prevent us from crossing that bridge and saying, gosh, I want to change, but I'm terrified, or, I'm not happy how I'm doing, how I'm performing, how I'm achieving. It's burning me out. I'm exhausted. But at the same time, it's hard for people to change, to make the change. Um, and I'm just thinking about, I just climbed Mount Pico in the Azores, which was so
Mhm.
beautiful and incredible and physically challenging. I mean, it's 8 hours of 4 hours up, 4 hours down,
Um,
hand over foot at the very top, right? And our guide, Mateo, he was telling this story of a woman who was not in fantastic metabolic shape. And the first, you have 46 markers up the mountain. And the first markers 1, 2, and 3, he said that's the test where he weeds everybody out. Who's going to make it up the mountain,
mm,
right? And he said, this one woman, she was like, Marco, she looked into his eyes, Marco, I'm going to do this. And she did not do well up that first part. So against his better judgment, he took her up the mountain. It ended up taking 12 hours. They ran out of food and water. She was really, really, really struggling. The sun was setting. It was a really challenging day. And on the mountain, she said, when I get home, I'm going to go to the gym. I'm going to whip myself into shape. I'm going to build my strength. And he's like, and I've followed her for years, but the change hasn't happened. She hasn't been able to implement it. And he was just observing, we were just talking about humanity and how important it is to cultivate mindset, but how difficult it is to cultivate that mindset. So I'm just using this case as an example of, like, how do people get out of their own way, surrender, accept, choose to change?
For many of us, we get such a benefit out of holding on to our current identity, whether we want to admit it or not. And that is a very hard question. Like when I ask people, what is the best part of you being stuck in this place? And they're immediate, there's no best part. There's no best part, Lisa. This is awful. And I'm like, we don't do anything in life without a reason. We don't hold on to identities without a reason. It's because we do see the benefit. So for this woman, if we were using her as an example, the benefit of her not having to do anything, she doesn't have to make hard choices. She doesn't have to be disciplined, because let's face it, when you're changing your health, there has to be a level of discipline. You can call it devotion. I don't care what you call it. But when you're starting something new, it's going to be hard. It's not going to feel good. And I talk to my clients about this all the time. Like, shifting your identity is wildly uncomfortable. So if you aren't willing to expand your capacity to hold discomfort, good luck. It's like, that favorite pair of slippers that you have, and they're broken in and they're just ugly. They've got holes in them, but you put your feet in and they just feel like butter on your feet, but you got to toss them. So you get a new pair of slippers, and every time you put them on, they don't really feel like they fit your feet, but you persevere until pretty soon you go back to the old pair of slippers. And you're like, oh, I really do need to toss these now, right? It's the willingness to work through the discomfort to come out the other side. Changing your health takes a lot of work. Changing your identity takes a lot of work. Like, how do you have to be in this world? What kind of identity do you need to adopt to go from being unfit and unhealthy to, say, adopting an athlete mindset? There's a lot that you're going to have to give up. And most people are unwilling to give it up. So even when we talk about identity, and this is for you, this is for anybody listening, when you say I'm a recovering polisher, what you're really saying is I'm still holding on to this identity. Right? So even if we go back to the addiction community, which is, is problematic in itself, one of the problems with in addiction recovery is that every single time they go in and they state, I am an addict, right? I am a recovering addict. What they're doing is they're reinforcing that story and that belief. So every single day, they have to work against that belief. Every single day, they're working against that identity instead of saying, I'm a healthy, whole, healed human who doesn't drink, doesn't smoke, doesn't do whatever it may be. It's a very different mindset. It's a very different identity that they're working from. So yeah, identity work is hard because we're not talking about just changing your thoughts. We're changing who you believe you are at your core. And most of your identity was built between the ages of 1 through 7, right? So we have no filter. We just absorb everything like little sponges. And we never actually go back to see, like, do I need to upgrade the hardware here? Do we need to
Yeah.
upgrade the operating
Yep.
manual? We just go through life. So I kind of look at everybody as like, wounded, broken little children walking around in adult bodies, never actually checking in to say, like, is this valid?
Yes.
Is this valid for me? So that's why it is so hard for people, because it really is taking a hard look at the benefit you're getting out of holding on to your beliefs about, your money, your health, your relationships, your business, productivity, proving. All of it has to strip away. And that's why there's no shortcuts in this work. There's no Amazon Prime for this.
There's no Amazon Prime. But what you're saying is so fascinating to me, because I always thought when you say recovering, it implied full healing. So the language, so how can we reframe when somebody
Who would you
says,
be if you
I
no
am a
longer
recover?
looked at yourself as a recovering perfectionist?
Yeah.
What else would have to fall away if that story no longer existed?
Oh,
Like,
yeah. I mean, it's I think, yeah, it's the simple act of submitting, moving through life and giving yourself grace not to have the pressure to feel forced or feel like things have to be perfect, and just the ability to be unattached. Like, I'm going to submit this, I'm going to put this out to the world, and I'm going to make mistakes. I always joke, my husband's in finance. So I'm like, well, I have a 20% margin of error on any given day. Cause he'll be like, how did you screw this up? I'm like, because a 20% margin of error. So to me, yeah, I mean, I guess if the brain is believing the language that we are using, which of course it is, it's internalizing, and the body, our cells are listening. What is a positive reframe in the language? Because I honestly thought recovering was a positive language. So how do we reframe as women, especially when it comes to healing and our bodies? Because our bodies go through so many shifts, especially in midlife. How do we reframe? Is it just as simple as stating what is in the present moment? Like, my body knows how to heal. I'm perfect as I am. How do we reorient ourselves?
what would happen if you worked from the place of already being healed? How
Well,
would you show up
exactly.
differently? So
So what
that's
is
it.
what
The
is,
acting as if you are already healed, you're already there,
got it.
which requires then you show up with high levels of compassion and grace for yourself. It means you have to release the parts of you that want to fix, um, criticize. They're no longer there. It requires high levels of acceptance, right? What if there's absolutely nothing wrong with you? I mean, how do you even, if we go back to perfection, how do you even measure that? There's no measure. What's perfect enough? So different decisions about where you're holding your attention and your energy around some of these topics, which is it's hard, right? Because we've been programmed to fix the problem, you focus on the problem. But when you focus on the problem, you're actually bringing more energy to the problem, which creates the
Yeah.
problem.
Yeah. Hey, gorgeous. To preserve muscle in midlife, you need at least 100 to 120 grams of protein every single day. Most women I see in my practice are getting half of that, and they have no idea. They're skipping breakfast, picking at salads, or calling a yogurt lunch. And then they wonder why they're losing muscle, gaining belly fat, and feel exhausted by mid afternoon. It's not your discipline, it's actually your protein. So I made you a free guide that fixes the foundation, starting with breakfast. Grab the 30-gram midlife breakfast cheat sheet free at estherblum.com/protein. That's estherblum.com/protein. Go feed yourself, gorgeous. And now back to the show. So I just think practically speaking, like how do you teach your clients to really, have mantras around this or meditations around this,
So when I look at rewiring our subconscious mind, which is where most of these things come from, I do a lot around hypnosis. So people can, hypnosis isn't about getting you to quack like a duck or perform on stage. It's about getting your brain into a state where you can shut off your conscious and your subconscious can hear the new messaging, right? Because when I talk about your program from age 0 to 7, right? Your unconscious mind was just absorbing everything because that's the brainwave you were working in. So it's giving yourself permission to do that as an adult. And there's so many different self-hypnosis out there for things from confidence to accepting your body to your relationship with money. It requires that you slow down. So for any machines, you actually have to slow down and actively listen to these audios. But I find that hypnosis and self-hypnosis is way more powerful than just mantras. However, I do believe in mantras around claiming your identity as well. I've given clients the exercise of writing on their bathroom mirror, like, what is the identity you want to embody? There was a period of time in my life where, when I was really in my high achiever era, where I thought success was that destination. So I'd written books, I'd written courses, I'd built my business, like all these things, right? From the outside looking in, it looked super successful. But for me, I wasn't successful because the money in the bank did not match the external. So I wrote on my mirror, I am successful. And every day it was like, Lisa, you get to embody that way of being. And what's interesting is when you start to embody that new identity, everything else shows up. The only person that was holding that arm's length for me, the financial success, was the part of me that didn't believe I was successful yet. So I am statements are one of the most powerful things we can tell our brain. I've given a client before who was always so hard on her body. Look in the mirror, right? Critical thoughts, critical thoughts, critical thoughts. So she just wrote, be kind on her mirror. And every time she looked at herself, as soon as the negative thoughts rolled in, right in behind, she was like, no, we're going to be kind. And then this is a client who ultimately, went to her doctor 6 months later and she sent me a message. She's like, God, Lisa, I just stripped down and did the thing and like wasn't even self-conscious of my body anymore because I'm so in a place of love and acceptance of my body. And love and acceptance doesn't mean that you can't be available for change. It just means you're no longer resisting what's here today. And she learned that by starting with, can we just start by being kind? So there's so many simple ways that we can put ourselves into these new identities. Reminding yourself it's safe for you to rest. There's nobody standing behind you telling you you're being lazy. It's starting to pay attention to the voices in your head. Is it yours or is it the voice of your dad? Who told you to get off your butt and, go make yourself useful? I mean, we all heard that growing up. Go make yourself useful. So it's starting to notice where these voices came from. Is that true for me anymore? What is an alternate story I can start to tell myself? And am I willing to be in the discomfort until I really embody that new way of being, until I really embody that new identity? So yeah, you're no longer a perfectionist because you go do the things now. I'm no longer a perfectionist. Like I just like let's ship it. Let's go.
Yeah. Yeah. That's right. Amen.
Amen.
What I know that personal fitness is a passion of yours, and it's a really powerful transformation tool. Oh my gosh. Rising to the level of challenging your body again and again, every time you pick up a weight and put it back down again. And as we know, the mind wants to quit long before the body does.
Isn't that the truth?
The mind says, F this, I'm tired. I'd rather be on the couch right now. I don't actually want to be here. Or some days we really do want to be there. But what are some of really your favorite ways on the days you feel like I don't wanna? Or
So good. This is a daily battle. No. One, I identify as an athlete. I am an athlete. So that identity serves me well because an athlete is going to get up and go do. However, one of the biggest one of the biggest things I say to myself, these are not fancy techniques, is Lisa, stop talking to yourself. Like stop talking. Stop talking. It's staying committed to the things and staying in integrity with the things that I said I was going to do, right? So a lot of times in the gym, it's just one more set, one more rep, and pretty soon it's going to be done, right? Like I've done it enough times to know that I'm going to be done and I'm not going to die. I also have evidence that I'm not going to die. And I've also really learned to tune into my body, knowing when is a good time to, okay, we're going to get up and we're going to go because this is the commitment we've made. But also knowing when I wake up and going, you know what, today, this my highest commitment and the thing I most need to be in integrity with is my well-being. And today that looks like I'm staying in bed because my body actually needs rest. So a high achiever always pushes through. Always. A high performer knows when they need to pull back. And there's a really big difference. And that takes a tremendous amount of self trust. And it also means on the days where I say, Lisa, we're not training today because this is not going to be good for you, giving myself a lot of grace and compassion because that old voice of like, are you sure? Are you sure? But knowing, like, I have my whole life to work out. One workout is not going to change anything. And for me, it's not a pattern. Now, some people, some people have to learn the discipline of getting up and going and doing the thing because they haven't worked through the like this is hard and I need to stick with it being hard until it feels easier, again coming back to the slippers. Whereas for many of us, the other side of that is many of us have to learn when to slow down, when to pull back and not push through. So it's different for everybody. And I think often people are listening, trying to find the right way, but the right way for you is not necessarily going to be the right way for me. Some people need to kick up their butt to go do the thing, work through it. And other people, the harder thing is to not go do the thing. That's where the work is for them. So, high achievers, we get celebrated a lot for our ability to push through, which then feeds the whole archetype that is unhealthy for us. So, yeah, it's very, very interesting work depending on the client and the perspective that they're coming from. But what I do love about the gym, I think about it all the time, how it relates to business is it's not sexy. It's not overly fun, and the best results come from doing the basic movements over and over again, right? With precision, and that's what's going to yield results. And I can do hard things there. So when I come into my business, it's Lisa, the simple things are going to be the things that create results in your business. It's not let go of the fancy garbage that everybody's spewing. Like, come back to what are the simple things, and then chop wood, carry water. Learn to read the data. I love feelings. I talk a lot about feelings, but we have to have the data to back up our decisions, because if we're constantly making decisions from our feelings, quite often those feelings are attached to these unhealthy archetypes. They're going to steer us down the wrong path. So having data to back up decisions. So the gym reminds me the data matters. You can do hard things and keep it simple. That's what's going to get results over time. And then, fall this is the best piece of advice I can give anybody, is fall in love with the ordinary if you want to create extraordinary results.
Mm-hmm. I love all of this and what you're putting down and picking up. And yes, that book, Chop Wood, Carry Water, if you all have not read it, it's so incredibly simple that you could overlook any of the take home messages there, but they are brilliant. And it really is those gloriously unsexy daily lather, rinse, repeats that yield so many great results, so that when you do indulge in a great meal, when you do miss a workout here and there, it doesn't has absolutely zero net impact. And also, I mean, this probably depends on your archetype, but the theory of active rest, I always loved active rest. Like when I trained for the marathon, for example, or long runs, it was even a quote unquote rest day. You were still moving your body, but gently, differently. Maybe it was a yoga class, maybe it's just a long, gentle walk or a gentle spin class. Like it, and you need the same things in your business, days of active rest, the white space in your calendar, for example, or strategically taking time out of the office to get yourself in a new environment and stimulate creativity that way. Like there are so many beautiful, awesome parallels. And yes, I love how you talk about just stepping into that person of, I am an athlete now, claim it. I think as women, we don't claim what is already in front of us. It is already ours. And we forget that we have the power to do that. No one is going to show up at your door, Lisa, or mine, and be like, here you go. Here's your certificate. Now that you have this certificate or this trophy, now you can say you're this. No, just say it. And okay, I am an athlete. Well, what do athletes do? Well, athletes eat, a really nice mix of macros. We fuel our body throughout the day. We're not starving ourselves. We're getting our sleep. We're managing our stress, and we're showing up at the gym 2-3 times a week, maybe more, but we're just really consistent. And that's when you can kick your feet up instead of having, I think that the struggle is people have so much noise. They have so much guilt and shame and time spent on all the things they're not doing. I should have done this better. Well, I didn't log my food today, therefore I suck. And no, just, so what? Like, just go do it imperfectly. That's where the archetypes you talk about are so insightful and helpful, because once you understand your archetype, you can say, well, is this really true? Or is this true? Am I a failure because I skipped one thing? No, just means you're human. Get back on and keep doing it. That's it. And that is what I love what you're talking about.
What is at the base of all of these archetypes is the feeling of shame, right? And shame is the belief that there's something fundamentally wrong with you, right? That you actually have to earn your worthiness and deservingness. And for anybody who's listening, who is a mother or a father, right? When that baby lands on your chest, when it comes out of your body, you don't look at it and go, well, you better get to work. If you want to be loved, you better prove yourself, right? Like, we come into this world more than enough. But somewhere along the line, we learn that we're not enough. And that's what creates all of this. So this underlying feeling of shame drives everything. But most people have been living with so much shame their whole life that they don't even identify with the feeling. And this is why I'm always looking at people's behaviors and the things attached to their identity, because it's always shame driven. So people can say like, oh, I don't feel shame. Yes, you do, because I see it in the behaviors. I see it in how you treat yourself. I see it in how you're showing up. So every moment of every day, we have an opportunity to choose how we think and feel about ourselves. You can choose to be critical, or you can choose to be caring. If you wouldn't say the things to your daughter, your son, your best friend that you're saying to yourself, like, what specifically makes it okay to say it to you if you wouldn't say it to somebody else? And when we start to think about things in that way, like, it just changes the game. So whether you eat the cookie or you don't eat the cookie, just make a choice. And then every day keep choosing. Does this align with the outcomes that I want to create? Are, are the words that I'm following up with after I eat this cookie, are they supporting how I want to feel about myself? Yes or no? So every choice has another choice, and the choices you make will determine the quality of your life. That's that's the reality. So gym, everything you do in the gym can be translated into how you're showing up in your real life as a whole human. That's what I love about the two. I just think the gym is such a metaphor, and it's such a metaphor for everything else in our world.
It really is. But I am, as are you, such a believer that when you train your body, you train your mind, you train your spirit, you discipline yourself. It's really important to push yourself out of your comfort zone and just try new things. You might actually be better at them than you thought you would be.
And women, we are so much stronger than we give ourselves credit for. And as somebody who, and I mean that on all levels, I mean, we literally push human life out of our bodies. Um, but as somebody who's been in the gym training, like, oh my God, for so many years now, since I graduated high school, I've been in the gym, right? I was one of the few women in the gym that wasn't just on the Stairmaster at the time. I think the Stairmaster was the big thing back in the day. Um, I was actually throwing weights around, and I love that I'm seeing more and more that there are equal amounts of women. Sometimes there's more women in the gym than men, and they're not throwing around the 5-pound dumbbells anymore. They're under the squat rack. They're doing the deadlifts. They're on heavy leg press. It's so amazing to see that women are stepping into their power and building more resilience for themselves. It'll help them as they age. But I also believe that as women become stronger, and I don't mean like turning into men with longer hair, but actually mentally and physically stronger, we'll be able to have a bigger impact in the world. It's part of women stepping into their personal power, taking up more space, and owning their strength.
Yeah, to me, it's just the greatest form of therapy, or one of the greatest forms
Yeah,
of therapy
I agree.
there are. So, okay, I have loved every minute of this. Would you please share where listeners can find you, how they can work with you, and just
Absolutely.
continue to access their inner magic that you help them align with?
So I think the best place, if you're interested in finding out what your archetype is, I've created an entire quiz around this, which then leads to a very deep dive private podcast that, I mean, I don't think anybody comes out the other side of that the same. Like, you can't unknow what you're going to learn in there. So that's a really powerful part of my ecosystem. You can find that at lisacarpenter.ca/quiz. And then the place that I hang out the most is Instagram. Truly, it's just quick, easy, get in, get out. I'm on stories, and we're posting all the time. And of course, there's also my website, which will shortly be under construction, which I'm quite excited about. Time for a
Ooh.
refresh, It's just like
Yes.
time for a wardrobe change, which I also really love. So easy to find, lisacarpenter.ca.
.ca for Canada.
For Canada.
It's a boot time.
Oh,
Thanks,
gosh.
Lisa. If you loved this episode, follow or subscribe to the Midlife Realignment wherever you listen to podcasts and on YouTube, and leave a review to help other women find this show.